Break down the question in a few ways. If someone says, can Muslims believe in evolution? If we take the most basic understanding of evolution, which was understood even before Darwin, which is its biological change over time, then that's not even a question. Of course, it's not a problem. If someone says, by evolution, they mean Darwin's theory of evolution, which is the mechanism of natural selection, which is common ancestry, humans and chimps have a common ancestor, and so on and so forth. Muslims can believe this to be a valid scientific theory, a valid scientific model, a valid scientific paradigm, but not believe it to be absolutely true, because it doesn't even claim it to be absolutely true. So I, as a Muslim, I can accept it, I can believe in it as a model theory, as real science, but I don't have to accept it to be literally true. So that's a very simple way of answering the question, although that needs quite a bit of, you can expand on that quite a bit. In fact, you can give a whole lecture on that. But we do have a book, inshallah, coming out in IERA in April, inshallah, called Failed Hypothesis, Essays on Darwinism, Atheism, Science and Islam. And it's going to cover that particular topic in detail with references and examples and so on and so forth. Yes?
Besides the fitrah, what other arguments could you give for the existence of
Okay, good question. A bit of clarification. The fitrah is not an argument for the existence of God. Okay? So let me clarify what that means. There is no argument that you could make for morality. Right? Let me clarify what that means. I'm not talking about a particular model. I'm talking about what's known as ontology, what's known as existence. You cannot prove the existence of morality. You can speak about, this particular model of morality, they call it virtue ethics, this particular thing they call Kantian ethics, and so on and so forth. Talk about the actual existence. You cannot prove it scientifically, you cannot prove it philosophically, you cannot prove it in that way. But everyone here believes in it. It's inside you. That is a part of your fitrah, to recognize that there's right and wrong. Allah speaks about this in the Quran. So the fitrah is not an argument, it's something that's within you that's awoken by arguments. And that argument could be the design argument, or it could be the cosmological argument, or it could be the argument from consciousness, or it could be the argument from intentionality, and so on and so forth. So the fitrah is just something that we have, which is why if somebody has no argument for the existence of God, they can still believe in God in the same way somebody who's never heard of him, or somebody who's been studying arguments for the existence of God all their life. And this is also, it's a good point to point out. Someone could know 50 arguments for the existence of God, and he could refute every single atheist in the world, but he could be a disbeliever in God. Knowing something rationally does not mean you're going to believe it. I remember an example someone told me of someone that he knows who's a lung surgeon in a hospital. He actually operates on lungs. His patients are going to be mostly cancer patients, or mostly, obviously, due to smoking and whatnot. And shisha, for those of you who think it's not haram. It is. But he himself smokes cigars. He's a lung surgeon. He knows it's bad for him, but he still smokes it. So, the Quran, if you want to break it down, it tells you about three masters, or three ways of looking at the world, or three things that you follow. Firstly, you follow your society, right? So us here, we're not dressed in ponchos, we're wearing Western type clothes, most of us, because of society. So the first master is society. Quran says, don't follow your forefathers, don't follow society, don't go with the flow. 2, another master is desire, following your desires, like the desire to smoke a cigar even though you know it's bad for you. Thirdly, a way of looking at the world is using your akal, using your reason, using your mind. And using your mind, you will always come to the existence of God if you leave aside your desires, and if you leave aside your societal sort of pressures. Belief in God is always there. There is no such thing as a 100% atheist. It's not. Someone can say and convince themselves there is no God, but chances are, under certain pressure, the fitrah will come out. That doesn't mean they're going to stop believing. And you know, God says this in the Quran, Allah says this in the Quran, that most of mankind does not believe in God except that they also associate partners. And the fitrah is not, it just doesn't tell you in an abstract way there's a God. The fitrah tells you the central claim of Islam is true. And the central claim of Islam is not halal food, is not something else, is that the Creator is the only one worthy of worship. And that's the main thing that distinguishes Islam from every other way of life. That even wearing a ring, thinking this ring is going to bring you good or bad luck, is in Islam blasphemous. Pure tawheed, pure understanding that there's only one Creator worthy of worship is part of your fitrah. Now, tawheed is something which we should all study as Muslims. It's something which is knowledge, which is not, you know, nice to have. It's actually knowledge which is obligatory upon every single Muslim male and female above the age of puberty, of course. Obligatory. So, tawheed is not, you know, you wouldn't know the details of it like we have in our fiqh, in our Aqidah books, but you would know the basic of it, you would know because of the fitrah. I want to answer another question which somebody wrote here. Why are you religious, and what does it mean to be religious in 2018? I never said I was religious. We should be very careful about language that we use, because religious can mean many different things. You know, today I was reading an article about Hindu godmen. You have these men in India who claim they're God, and you have these religious devotees. I think there's some good arguments for this. I don't even think we should call Islam a religion. Islam's not conventionally a religion, it's actually more of a way of life, right? So, I could twist the question and, not twist, but I could sort of uncover the question and say, why are you Muslim and what does it mean to be religious in 2018? So I could change that to, why are you Muslim and what does it mean to be Muslim in 2018? Well, the answer is simple. I'm Muslim because Islam's true, and it's relevant in 2018 because truth matters. So, and why Islam is true, that's a different question. There's a really important book, The Eternal Challenge. You can go online, put in Eternal Challenge, PDF, IERA, and it has all the Quranic arguments for the existence of God, why the Prophet ﷺ is a prophet, and why the Quran is not a man-made book. Okay, any other questions? Before I yes, hello. Sure. Sure. Yes, I have, but
on that, I feel like the majority of the talk, although it was great, it was mainly just criticisms of the scientific method, not really what it said it was going to be, but I don't mean that in a bad way.
Sure, no, of course. I understand your question. No, I'm just going to sort of summarize what the whole argument I was making. I wasn't criticizing science, I was more criticizing the public understanding of science. And what I was doing was, I was trying to show what evolutionary theory is actually based upon. Now, there might be a person who says human-chimp ancestry is compatible with Islam. There might be somebody who says we can accept Darwin's theory to be true, and in fact there's these verses of the Quran. And there are some people who make that argument, and there's other people on the other side who don't make that argument. They actually argue against that. Now, what I'm here to basically say is this. A mainstream scientific understanding of Darwin's theory is that it's based on a scientific method which has multiple assumptions, including the assumption of methodological naturalism. It's based on a probabilistic framework which has sub-assumptions of gradualism, natural selection, random mutation, and so on. And there's disputes at a conceptual and a scientific level. So according to mainstream academia, it's based on a probabilistic framework which has assumptions and there's disputes. You don't even have to be a Muslim to realize that academically, no one is saying this is true in a literal sense. So when we have a religious belief on the other end, which says something different in one aspect, which is the human-chimp ancestry, you have some people who say, look, the scientists, they believe in this, so let's fuse Islam and Darwinian evolution together and let's try and make it compatible. Other people say, no, the science is wrong and the Quran is right. All I'm doing is doing what I would have done even if I was an atheist, which is, that's what the theory is based upon. It's not claiming certainty. So why would you use something certain to try and dislodge something else? It's a false idea to say this or that, because this is a belief that we believe is true. This is a belief which is based on a probabilistic framework which has assumptions, which has disputes. Now somebody may say, I believe in human-chimp ancestry. Someone may say, I may not. I do not, literally. But that belief that it's true literally, or belief that it's not true literally, is not based on the science.
So what I'm not asking about the human-chimp.
Okay.
What I'm asking about in a broader sense. So the finches in New Zealand.
Sure.
What about the asking that?
Yeah. See, now this is an important question because you're speaking about evolution as a general concept. Now, evolution as a general concept is not scientific theory, it's actually an observation. And human beings also have that type of evolution. Evolution simply means biological change over time. And evolution was written, theorized about, and propagated all across the world by philosophers and proto-scientists for at least 3,000 years of human history. Darwin came along in the last 150 years and gave a particular type of evolutionary model. And aspects of that model contradict Islam. Okay? So if someone says, what about the finches? I would say, yeah, they're great, but what about the finches? There's no contradiction between that type of evolutionary process, which we knew existed even before Darwin, and Islam. Why would there be? Do you see? The misunderstanding happens when someone conflates the observation of evolutionary biological change and Darwin's theory. Like, this is certain because it is. We can see biological change happening all the time. In fact, the human beings all across the world, we have mutations which happen in human beings in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, which help them survive against malaria. That's human evolution. We have the fact that human skin color is a product of geographical location. That's evolution. But we knew this before Darwin. Do you see? So, evolution itself is simply an observation. It's simply biological change over time. Darwin said more than this. He said all of life, including you, me, an elephant, a blade of grass, goes back to one cell. And he said that that one cell changed into all of us over a period of billions of years by the process of natural selection. And that is based on a probabilistic framework which has assumptions, which has disputes. I'll give you some of the assumptions, alright, okay? So let's stick to human-chimp ancestry. Human-chimp ancestry, according to the mainstream understanding of scientists, this is not something I've made up, is something which has 4 assumptions on the minimum. Number 1 is based on the assumption of methodological naturalism, which is that that every single thing in nature that you study, you have to give a naturalistic explanation. 2 is based on the assumption of a single origin. There's only one origin, 4 billion years ago or whatever it was. 3, it is something based on the assumption of homology, which is similarities are due to common descent. But we know of a counterexample to that, which is homoplasy, and that natural selection is what drove this to that. So when you come across, for example, I'll give you a reference to a book, Evidence in Evolution, which is published by Cambridge University, written by an atheist philosopher of science by the name of Suboor, just published a few years ago. He basically says, and this is him being factual, he says, I believe in human-chimp ancestry. I believe it's true. But all you can say scientifically, you can't say it's true literally, you can say it's based on a probabilistic framework and it has assumptions. Do you see?
I think the distinction that you made between Darwinism and his idea of evolution and
Yes.
maybe should have been mentioned at the beginning. It gives you that framework, because I think
Okay.
it's conflated too, but...
Okay, that's a good point. I'll try and add that to my presentation. So something, I mentioned it very briefly in the first, I think, 3 or 4 slides, but I just mentioned it like very, in a very brief way. But if I emphasize on that, maybe that will help resolve that.
I think a lot of, especially non-Muslims, they have this view that we're completely against evolution.
Sure.
Obviously, the way that you described it, it's not just one thing. That was just my assumption of this event. I thought it was going to be more based on that.
Well, we as Muslims need to know our science. We even need to know that the first evolutionary type of mechanism that was proposed by a Muslim evolutionary thinker, Al-Jahiz, 1200 years ago. In fact, there's a book published by a Cambridge historian, Rebecca Stott, called Darwin's Ghosts. And in there she mentions Al-Jahiz. Al-Jahiz existed 1200 years ago, 1050 years before Darwin. And he speaks about the fact that human skin color is an evolutionary adaptation to the thing. The whole problem is, how do you define evolution? The problem is today, the way in the public understanding it's been defined, evolution and Darwinian evolution is the same thing. It's like Hoover and vacuum. But for those of you who know, Hoover is a company and vacuum is actually, we call everything a Hoover. But actually there's a conflation. It's the same thing. We have evolution, which is a general mechanism, and we also have the Darwinian evolution. But like I said before, the book, Failed Hypothesis, inshallah this will go through in a lot more detail. Because I totally understand, I totally agree with you, and sorry for that it's sometimes hard to convey sometimes difficult ideas in such a short period of time. Which is why the Q&A is actually what we do most of the day.
With the structure that you just gave me now in a few minutes, I feel like if the talk was based like that, you want to with it, honestly. Like,
okay.
Saying it so logically just then.
I do actually change the talk pretty much every time I give it, so I think I'm going to focus on that next time. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
Are other religions wrong?
Sorry?
Are other religions wrong? Like, you're Islamic, would you say other religions are wrong in their beliefs?
Okay, I'm going to unpack the question a little bit before trying to answer it. So, the first thing is that we believe that God has sent messengers and prophets to every single nation on earth. So, if somebody says Christianity, do you as a Muslim believe it's wrong? Do you think Jesus was wrong or whatever, right? I'll have to sort of unpack the question a little bit. I'll have to sort of say, well, we do believe that he was a messenger of God, and we do believe that he himself was somebody who was chosen by God. The same with Moses and the Jewish faith and so on. We as Muslims, we do believe that we have the truth, and we do believe that we have arguments for the truth. And we do actually believe that a human being who lives in ignorance, in the sense that they've never heard of Islam, well, you know, they're not going to be questioned about why didn't you accept Islam, because they've never heard about Islam. But we do believe a human being who gets the sound understanding of Islam, and he gets evidence that it's true, and then he rejects it, he will be accountable on the day of judgment. So, Islam as a religion, do we believe it's right, and do we believe anything which contradicts that is wrong? Yes, but that doesn't mean that we reject other things. Like, for example, there's an argument that's made about, well, an argument that could be made about many of the ancient religions, which today we actually have remnants of them, which initially taught things which were incredibly similar to Islam, and from an Islamic perspective, God says He sent a messenger to every nation, so it could be that these people were true messengers of God. One example I'm thinking of is the prophet Zoroaster in the Zoroastrianism religion. Even though they started worshipping fire and they had all these sort of things that came in, but when you look at the ancient religion of the prophet Zoroaster, It's very similar to Islam. Of course, what exactly his teachings were not exactly they're not exactly intact. Similarly, and I'm not saying he's a prophet, I'm saying someone could make that argument that, you know, people like this could have been prophets. Similarly, there's a book called The Gospel of the Red Man, which you can get on Amazon. It's an amazing book. This book is about Christian missionaries who went to North America and they tried to convert the natives there. This is a long time ago. This book's old. So these Christian missionaries, they documented the beliefs of the native Indians. Now, what's really amazing about the native Indians is this: they believed in one God. They believed you shouldn't worship idols. They believed that you shouldn't drink alcohol. They believed you shouldn't commit adultery. They believed that you shouldn't blaspheme against God. They believed you should wake up in the morning, wash yourself at the river, and then pray to God. They believed in the hereafter. And the Christian missionaries said, the closest religion that we can describe these people to is the Orthodox Jewish religion, which is actually very similar to Islam. So again, who came to these Native Americans that they have? And by the way, I use the word Native Indian. I'm really sorry about that because actually it's a derogatory term. I learned that the hard way when I was in Canada, that you're supposed to use Indigenous people, not Indians. So their religion, if someone says, is their religion wrong? I don't want to say, yeah. I want to say, no. We believe Islam to be the truth, and anything which contradicts Islam, yes, it's wrong, but their religion may have remnants from something which was originally Islam. And sometimes, and I'm just saying this, not saying that your question implied this, but sometimes we have this bit of shyness, you know, the shyness about, oh, you know, we live in the 21st century, we should be careful about saying that we have the truth, and, you know, we should be tolerant towards other people's faiths. Yeah, I agree with all of that. But that doesn't mean you can't say, I believe I have the truth, and I believe I have arguments for the truth, and I believe that this truth that I actually have is something which is good for you as well. And I don't think that's something that we should shy away from. In fact, this is something which is openly in the Quran that God says, and this is related to the question about religion in the 21st century, it is He who sent His messenger with the religious, it is He who sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth, so that it may prevail over every single system, and enough is God as a witness. This is in the Quran. Meaning what? Islam as a religion is going to spread and dominate every single other religion. That's in the Quran. So we don't shy away from that. We believe that's the prophecy of the end times, that Islam will become, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Islam will go as far as, will go where the day and night reaches, and there will not be a single home except that Islam will enter it. Meaning every single continent, every single country, every single city, every single town, every single house, whether it's made of brick, mud, even hair, Islam will enter it. And we don't shy from that. We say it's the truth, and that's what's going to happen. Okay, any other questions? Yes, my friend.
Has evolution ever been hinted in Islam?
Sorry?
Has evolution ever been hinted in the Quran?
Has evolution ever been hinted in the Quran? Ooh, that's a really tough question. I've come across some stuff about it, but the one thing which look, firstly I'm going to be frank, I have no idea. I have read stuff about it, and I have read people putting together arguments about it, where they say this particular verse, Allah adds to His creation, and this particular verse about this, and this particular verse about this. But so far, every person that I've seen that's put forth this argument has not been an Islamic scholar. Has been people who are quite enthusiastic about this topic, which is nothing really wrong with that. But I haven't seen anything scholarly Because what you can't do, and one thing which I disagree with, is to take an English translation and then try and correlate that with scientific stuff we know now and then say, look how similar it is. Because, you know, the Quran has a tafsir, the Quran has scholars, the Quran has the whole system of understanding. So if you have anything that you've read from a scholarly source, then I'd be happy to read it, but I haven't come across anything scholarly. Yes?
I was just thinking about, of course, adaptation.
Yes.
Like, I don't know, Saul is mentioning this is spoken about in Islamic literature, but it's not Darwinian literature.
Yes, but that particular thing is understood according to other narrations to do with the high and Jannah, not earth.
There's two opinions. One that Adam was that high
Yes.
on earth, and the other one is in Jannah.
Yeah, but that still would not say anything about, you're right, adaptation, but that's not the literature itself, that's inference. And one thing that I've seen before is that people can take a scientific understanding of something, read the Quran, and do reverse engineering. I came across stuff about speed of light in the Quran. Someone took some verses and then divided this by that and then worked out the speed of light. I'm not kidding, they actually did. Another person spoke about black holes and then related to the Quran. Other people, they speak about the Quran has this particular thing. And I just think to myself something, right? Total side point, total run, yeah? We have absolutely phenomenal prophecies from the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ, which have come true before our very eyes in the last 500-600 years. The Mongol invasion, the Bedouin barefoot Arab who's going to build buildings to compete with each other, the particular fire that's going to happen in a place that's going to light up the backs of the camels in terms of the brightness in this particular part. This phenomenal stuff about prophecies which have actually come true, right? So when people try and use science and then bring out this verse, you divide it by this and you get the speed of light, I think, there's no point. I mean, if we're looking for evidence, there's more than enough evidence. Just look for the stuff which is scholarly, not stuff which is just made up. Yes, sister?
Something that came to mind for me was, I think there was a lot of controversy when Sayyid Hassan was talking about his views with evolution.
Yes.
I'm not too familiar with his views, but did he bring any verses from the Quran to support his opinions about that?
I don't like to talk about something that I have really little knowledge on. I've heard things through, if you like, other people. So he said this, and he said this, and he said this. Like right now. So I haven't read anything myself, but I know that there's a big controversy about this particular thing. Of course, I don't share those views if those are his views that I've been told that this is what he's actually saying. Whether he used the Quran to justify that, I don't know. But what I do know is that if somebody is going to do that, then even if they could hypothetically use the Quran to try and prove human chimp ancestry or whatever, or the Darwinian evolution, they still would not have done anything more than what I was basically saying here. Even if they say the Quran says this, science has never claimed it's absolutely true. For example, there's similarities between human beings and pigs, and human beings and chimps. And there's a verse in the Quran about a certain group of people that were turned into pigs and apes. So they're like, there you go, right? What? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. In fact, for evolutionary theory, it's not a plus point that we have similarities between human beings and pigs. It's actually a problem, because if similarities are due to common descent, which is the assumption known as homology, then we have similarities between humans and pigs which have nothing to do with common ancestry. So in fact, it's a contradiction for the people who believe that this is absolutely true. Because we have similarities between humans and pigs which don't exist between humans and chimps. But the chimp is supposed to be our most recent common ancestor. Likewise, there's also ants. There's a recent article that came out on ants. I don't know if anybody saw it. Ants, here's what they do, right? They go to war. They have slavery. They have medicine. They take over other species and domesticate them and use them as cows, aphids. They have complexes where they live, mega cities with millions of ants living together. Sociologically, according to biologists, the closest thing in nature to human beings is not pigs, not chimps, is ants. Now what some people can do is they can say, oh, Allah mentions the ant in the Quran, you know, this is again the inclusion thing. But look, this is all based on an inferiority complex. That's all it is. They keep hearing about this theory, they believe it to be true, they feel inferior because they feel the Quran is not in line with that, so they try and do reverse engineering. It's better for you to get rid of the inferiority complex, leave the Quran alone, and do something that you could do even as a secular rationalist, which is to understand the very science, and understand the very philosophy of science, and if you understood that, you wouldn't even feel the urge to try and prove or disprove the Quran using science. Because you'd know it's never claimed certainty in the first place. And this is all a byproduct of the thing which I began off with, which is we fundamentally misunderstand science. If I want to say someone's irrational in today's popular society, I say they're being unscientific. Rationality, truth, is the same as science nowadays. But that's not the philosophy of science. That's not the way it's actually understood. Science is just one particular tool to help us amongst other tools in trying to understand the way the world works. It's not the only tool. And even all of these questions, you could relate it all back to that. You know, if a particular person wants to prove human-chimp ancestry is true, right, and they try and use the Quran to do it, I'll just ask them a very simple question. I'll say to them, before Darwin, 200 years ago, would you have made that argument? Would you have tried to show human beings and chimps have a common ancestor before Darwin? They'd probably say no. I'm pretty sure they're going to say no. So why are you doing it after him? Because you believe that's true. You believe that's true because you don't even understand science. So fundamentally, we just need to go back to the foundations. We just need to go back to what each particular thing is based on. You have a question? Yeah.
So like there...
The one with the red top first, then I'll go for you. Sorry about that.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier about the fitrah, you said that in times of like trials, everyone basically has this calling to God. But even in like normally, we might have this thought in our minds which would actually challenge the existence of God. So how would you go about saying that? Couldn't that not be something that nature? Or would you say that that calling is not one thing in nature, whereas calling to God is one thing?
Okay, I'm going to break down something which your question is based on. Your question has an assumption, which is that the fitrah is an argument for God. Right? And this can actually be confusing. It's not an argument for God. The fitrah is not an argument for God. The fitrah is something which is awoken if there's an argument. Okay? So, I can't answer the question unless your assumption is true, but the assumption is not true. It's not an argument. The fitrah is just reality, it's just there. Now someone may say, I don't believe in it. I'll say, okay, I'm not here to convince you. But if you're dying in a hospital bed, you're not going to fall upon Richard Dawkins, right? You're going to think about, and they've actually done some studies with groups of people, groups of agnostics. They reminded one group about death, and they didn't remind the other group about death, the control group. And then afterwards they asked about their belief in God, and they asked this before and afterwards. And the ones who were reminded about death, they started believing in God more. Now, an atheist may come along and say, oh, they only started remembering God because, you know, they don't want to die. Well, obviously. But it's not an argument either way. If someone wants to... Look, Allah says in the Quran, man is contentious. People always come up with contentions. All we need to do, to the best of our knowledge as Muslims, pass on the message in a beautiful way, in a nice way, in a compassionate way, in a rational way, Leave it. Someone wants to accept. Look, we always think to ourselves, why doesn't he accept Islam? Or why doesn't she accept Islam? It's so logical. Look what Allah says. Allah says, whoever wants to believe, believe. Whoever wants to disbelieve, disbelieve. We're not here. The Prophet ﷺ, he was called a reminder. That's what he was. He was someone who was told to remind, and he was there to remind. He couldn't convince his own uncle. We're not there to convince people. We're just there to give the message. Whoever wants to accept it, accept it. Whoever doesn't want to accept it, they don't have to. Yes? Yes?
I think an idea becomes popularized, and I think people become sort of a bit afraid of the unknown. But I think if you look at the root of everything, whether it's atheism or Christianity, you see it has a lot of weaknesses, and I think we try too hard to try and sort of overcome these questions that people are posing, whereas I think at the base, they can all be eradicated, and the Quran very, very simply sort of handles the whole thing.
Yeah, there's a prophetic narration we should always keep in our mind. The Prophet ﷺ said, and remember, what the Prophet said, unless he explicitly states it, what he says is from Allah. It's not based upon his own thinking. He said, the cure to ignorance is to ask. It's to ask. In my experience, and I'm about maybe 10, 12 years older than you guys at university, when I'm dealing with Muslim students who are having doubts about particular scientific issues, it's always the same thing. They don't understand what they're talking about. They think they do. Oh, I read in this book. Okay. So, what's that based upon? Allah says, whoever wants to believe, believe. Whoever wants to disbelieve, disbelieve. Whoever wants to be guided, Allah will guide. Whoever doesn't want to be guided, Allah will not guide. So it's not even a matter of knowledge. It's actually not. It's actually a matter of the heart. If somebody sincerely is looking for the truth, it's not possible that they will not find the truth. That's not possible. It's just not possible. And I'll give you an example. Science, philosophy, you can put in the same thing because, some philosophical arguments shake up people, right? So I have one of these Instagram bros, right? I do not like Instagram. The only Instagram on my phone is what my sister uses, right? So this guy, he messaged me, he said, oh my faith is on the floor, I'm done, you gotta help me out. And I didn't know who he was. He just got a random message. And he was one of his Instagram bros who really his beard looked like it was chiseled, right? And he had one of these pictures in the window, mirror. Anyway, I thought, this guy, he looks so religious, yeah? So he's basically like, my faith is gone, that's it, khalas, I'm finished. I said, whoa, okay, what's happened? He said, I read this article and that's it, my iman's on the floor. I said, okay, what is it? He sent it to me. Look at the article. Stanford University Open Encyclopedia. So, not exactly academic, but anyway. Send it to me. Something about God being incoherent because of some particular things. So I opened it up and I study philosophy of biology and philosophy of evolution, and I've studied philosophy of religion as well. So I opened it up, and the guy, by the way, looked like he was 20, 21, whatever. I looked at it and I thought to myself, this guy has read this. Why did I say that? Because I read philosophical papers. It takes a lot of time. It's not like Harry Potter, you go from A to Z. Hermione? Is it Hermione? Where's Hermione? Wait, there you go. You study. Right. Can you read it like a novel? You can't. Philosophy, you read the beginning and you read the end, then you try and go through it, and philosophy is not there to give you answers, it's there to raise questions. Everybody who has a proper understanding of philosophy knows that. It's not there. 3,000 years, they can't even agree on morality or ethics, or they can't really agree on even if we have minds, or even if the world is real. You can't. So the guy's like, my mind's on the floor. So I said, have you read it? He's like, yeah. I said, no, have you read it? No, I didn't read it. I said, why were you doubting? He said, oh, but there's this big article, and it's got all these premises. And I said, you're doubting? Because of an article you didn't even read? And he said, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. Within IO, the Islamic Education Research Academy, we get these sort of emails, right? Another guy. Emails Hamza Sotsis, right? Hamza always tells the story, but he tells it in a much funnier way than I do, right? So he says, Khalas, that's it, my iman's gone, finished. What was it? They've discovered the God particle. The God particle, they've discovered it. That was it. And then the guy actually, from what I remember from what, that particular thing, he stopped praying or something, right? He's just gone, just finished. Stuck for life, that detail's not correct, but he, as in his iman, according to him, was finished. So Hamza said to him, okay, so they discovered the God particle. Yeah, you know, what are we going to do? They discovered the God particle. So Hamza said, okay, Akhi, you see the particle, they were looking for a particle that they couldn't find, physicists, some decades ago. And this particular particle was giving mass to other particles or something like this. So they postulated that there's this particle that exists in the universe. They couldn't find this particle, so they called it the goddamn particle. They couldn't find the particle, so they called it the goddamn particle. Over time, simpler terminology came to use and they called it the God particle. And then they discovered the God particle. And there's this guy absolutely freaking out, probably running around in circles and hiding under a desk in a fetal position. Crazy! And then when we explained this to him, he's like, oh, okay. I am not kidding. And that is the level of ignorance that some Muslims actually have on this issue, and they're the ones who actually have the problems. It's all a sociological, psychodynamic sort of issue. It's not based on reality.